Hello, and welcome to the inaugural event of the Village Demands Statewide Coalition on Black American Affairs. We're here today to celebrate Black women and the Black family. And while we celebrate Black History Month and Women's History Month, neither completely represents or celebrates who we are as Black women. This is a celebration of Black women and the Black family. Today, we pay tribute to the generations of African American women who struggled and prevailed in the face of adversity. We honor our Black queens, warriors, and leaders who fought both racism and sexism. We honor Black women who, despite being enslaved, raped, and abused, not only survived, but thrived. We honor Black women who, despite the laws that forbid them to read, learned to read. And taught their children how to read as well, knowing that it would provide them with a better life. We honor Black women who, despite being forbidden to attend school and then forced to attend inferior schools, created their own schools for their families and their village. We're here today to honor Black women who suffered injustice and no justice. To the Black women ancestors who prayed, suffered, worked diligently, and yes, dared to dream, to make their children get and be able to achieve their own dreams. Those who paved the way for me, a Black woman, descendant of slaves, to become the vice president of Chabot College. We also honor our Black women who paved the way so that in 2021, there's an African American woman as the vice president of the United States. And so today, we honor Black women ancestors and thank them. We thank them for all their sacrifices. We thank them for knowing that there is always light if we are brave enough to see it. We thank them for being brave enough to be the light for our families and our village. We thank them for carrying our race forward on their backs, in their hearts, and with their spirits, achieving the unthinkable for centuries. For our Black sisters, our Black mothers, aunties, for big mamas, our Black queens, our fierce warriors, our brave pioneers, all of them who had that Black girl magic long before it had a name. We thank you, we honor you, we celebrate you. Ashe, and so it is.
Ashe. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. My name's Lakeisha Bradley, and I will be going over some of our Zoom housekeeping with you. But before I get there, I would be remiss in this event where we are honoring and celebrating African American women if I did not share with you a little bit about Dr. Stacy Thompson. Dr. Stacy Thompson was raised in the Bay Area, and she has more than 25 years experience in higher education. As an educator, she supports community college students of color to reach their educational goals. She mentors faculty and staff and administrators who wish to advance their careers in the community college setting. Dr. Thompson started her career in higher education, teaching early childhood development at Merritt College in Oakland, California. And after 10 years in the classroom and graduating, she became the Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at Merritt College. Currently, Dr. Thompson serves as the President of Academic Services at Chabot College in Hayward, California. Understanding the vital role that community plays in the lives of Black student success, Dr. Thompson serves on local, state, and national boards. She was recently elected to the Board of Trustees for Lewis and Clark College, and she serves as the president of the Western Region Council on Black American Affairs, whose mission is to improve educational opportunities for Black students and professional opportunities for Black faculty, staff, and administrators. She also serves on the National Council on Black American Affairs, and she is a founding member of the Village Demands, whose mission it is to eradicate anti-Blackness in higher education. Seeing the need to increase the number of Black faculty and staff in community colleges, Dr. Thompson has created and supported many national, state, and local professional development opportunities for African Americans in higher education. Most recently, African American Leadership Institute in collaboration with the Chancellor's Office. Dr. Thompson holds a doctorate in education and a master's degree in educational leadership from Mills College, a master's degree in child development from Mills College, and a bachelor's degree from Lewis and Clark College. And thank you very much, Dr. Thompson, for all that you do for our community. And now I'll share with you some of our Zoom housekeeping items. As you'll see on the screen, this presentation is being recorded, and you can contact Brandon Christian at thevillagedemands@gmail.com in order to receive a copy of this. Your videos are off and muted, and so you will only be able to see and hear our panelists. We want you to please share with us, though, what institution you're representing, so please use that chat function of the Zoom control panel to call out your colleges and universities. We are so happy to have you here with us. You would be able to use any of our hashtags for social media. Some of them are the Village Demands, TVD Women's History Month. You'll see others that have been sent in the chat as well. And they're also located in the last page of our event program. Again, the webinar is recorded, and you can ask your public information officer as well to contact Brandon Christian about obtaining a copy, or you can email the address on your screen directly. Located at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an option for live closed captioning, and that's in the Zoom toolbar. You can also enter your questions for our presenters using the Q&A button on the bottom of your screen and read their responses if they are able to respond to this webinar. Unfortunately, time might not allow us to answer all of your questions in our live Q&A at the end of our program, but please know that we will do our best to get those answers out to you, even if it is after our presentation today. So thank you all, and back to you, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Lakeisha. Now it is my great honor to introduce someone who actually needs no introduction, Dr. Stanback Stroud. Dr. Stanback Stroud is in early June 2020, in the midst of racial dynamics sparked by the murder of George Floyd and countless other Black lives. And in the spirit of President Obama's call for us to look to ourselves, Dr. Regina Stanback Stroud met with other community leaders in education and put their minds and hearts together with the goal of creating a space, a village, for the Black and African-American community in the community colleges to come together. This organization became known as the Village Demands. Dr. Stanback Stroud is an anti-racist activist and a committed pioneer facilitating diversity, equity, and inclusion literacy development. She has dedicated over 35 years of her life work to being a higher education leader, an educator, including her service to Chabot, Chancellor to Peralta Community College. We haven't had her at Chabot yet. We hope to have her at some point. But she's been a Chancellor at Peralta Community College District and President of Skyline College. She's now the CEO of RSS Consulting LLC. Dr. Regina Stanback Stroud served as a presidential appointee of President Barack Obama. Her work in equity and leadership is recognized by the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, Statewide, Regina Stanback Stroud Diversity Award, and the Western Region Council on American Affairs Diversity Award. Dr. Regina Stanback Stroud Leadership Achievement Award was named from the Western Region Council on Black American Affairs, and we are proud to say that we continue to offer that award to outstanding folks who have been instrumental in diversity and equity in community colleges. So now I would like for you to welcome Dr. Regina Stanback Stroud.
Good afternoon. I'm here channeling my soror Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Marsha Fudge, when she walked into the room, and she brought her sister, auntie, grandmother, mama energy into the room that was not accustomed to beholding the strength of the Black woman and the Black family. So I say to you, good afternoon, because I love and appreciate and know that I'm not in this room by myself. I want to start this Women's History Month acknowledging that we sit on stolen land made possible by the genocide of women, family, people indigenous to this land. And we are experiencing the impact of the toxic masculinity combined with white supremacy as Asian women are murdered for being Asian women. Latinx women suffer the same excruciating pain that as did Black enslaved women of having their babies snatched from their arms and from their breasts and being put in cages. So today, I welcome you to this Women's History Month celebration of the Black woman and the Black family being hosted by the Village Demands. And at a recent time when we were, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, we were being bombarded with the constant reminders of the pervasive existence of white supremacy and the destructive toll that it takes on Black lives and Black minds and Black bodies, exemplified by the murder of Mr. Floyd and the countless other unarmed Black men, women, and children, particularly under the legally sanctioned color of authority. My friend, my colleague, and my brother, Dr. Ed Bush, reached out to me and he said, Regina, I heard you were going to convene all the Black people in the system together and do something about what's going on. So, you know, I had to marvel at the power that he thought I had to pull all the Black people together in the system. And then I stopped to realize that he was saying to me, because sister, I see you. I see your strength. I see your beauty, your brilliance, your majesty. He was saying that to me. So I called on the village and other sisters like Nzinga Dugas, Dr. Tammy Robinson, Dr. Stacy Thompson, Katrina King, Dr. Teresa Aldridge. And I called on brothers of Ada Men like Dr. Ed Bush and Dr. Abdul Malik Bull and Brandon Christian. And we stood up this organization called the Village Demands, lifted our voices with demands to start with eradicating anti-Blackness in higher education. And we introduced the world to the Village Demands. And we carved out village time amongst African-American and Black educators in the system while we were addressing the state of education for African-American and Black students. And this statewide coalition became a chapter of the Western Regional Council on the Black American Affairs, which is part of the region of the National Council of the Black American Affairs, which is part of it, is an affiliate of the American Association of Community Colleges. But our village is a big one, and the support of others matter. So I want to acknowledge the colleges and the districts that responded to literally 2 to 3 weeks notice and subscribe to this event so that every faculty, staff, and student in their college or district could attend and have access to this session. I want to thank American River College and Chabot College, Chabot Las Positas Community College District, and the Contra Costa colleges, the College of San Mateo, the College of the Sequoias, and Kenyatta College. I want to thank Cosumnes River College, Los Rios District, the Folsom Lake College, Fresno City College, Las Positas College. I want to thank Madera College, Monterey Peninsula College, Norco College, the Peralta Community College District and the colleges within that district, the Riverside Community College, Sacramento City College, Solano College, San Diego Mesa College, Southwestern College, and West Hills College, Lemoore. And I hope that I didn't leave any out, but it matters that we are here, that you are here with us. I want to thank our sponsors. And as one of the sponsors, I'll say it goes without saying that RSS Consulting, go to the next slide, please, Brandon, that RSS Consulting would be in the front of the line supporting the Village Demands. It is a part of a culminating point in my life's work as a self-described anti-racist activist. And we have another sponsor. Next. We have another sponsor, the Oakland East Bay Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated has been serving the Oakland and surrounding communities for over 40 years, directly supporting in conjunction with national initiatives. The organization uses its collective strength to promote academic excellence, provide scholarships, support the underserved, and educate and stimulate participation in the establishment of positive public policy, and highlight the issues and provide solutions to the most pressing community needs. Please do join me in welcoming and thanking my soror, President Debbie Harris of the Oakland East Bay Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated.
Thank you, Dr. Stanback Stroud, my dear, dear sorority sister, for the warm introduction. And I want to say to everyone, good afternoon. I bring you greetings from all of my sorority sisters, and I want you all on this webinar to know how honored we are to be a sponsoring organization of this Village Demands statewide coalition on Black American Affairs inaugural event to celebrate Black women and the Black family. We need events like these. It's special. Thank you for joining, making the time today, and giving space to this important afternoon. Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, an organization comprised of predominantly African-American women serving predominantly African-American communities, whatever city, wherever area they reside, understand firsthand that our women and our communities are often undervalued, underrated, underserved, and overlooked. So the honoring we are about to experience over the next hour and a half, we hope will lift our spirits and buoy our resolve to keep going on, to keep up our fight for right in our communities, to stay the course. Dr. Thompson, thank you for your leadership as host you will give this afternoon. Dr. Brown and all of the other panelists, thank you for the words of encouragement you will offer. And to the performing artists, thank you for sharing your talents with us today. Of course, the men who are on this call know that your support means the world to us. Thank you for always valuing us. Finally, Soror Stanback Stroud, thank you, a heartfelt thank you for extending this opportunity to our chapter to be a part of a community that you had a hand in building. To give us as sorority sisters working in our community an opportunity to be a part of something larger than ourselves and to be engaged with other community leaders. Let us all on this Zoom today rejoice in this day that we have been granted, and let's put our hearts and souls into enjoying this event. Again, we are honored to be here. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much, President Harris. Now it is my honor to introduce Mama Vera and Brother Mory. Dr. Vera Nobles will describe the significance of libation within our ancestral tradition. She will explain libation pouring as the feeding of the ancestors and our sacred responsibility to invite and invoke ancestral spirit, energy, and power into all important and significant occasions. Dr. Mory will accompany her on the drums.
Okay. Woman power, motherland. Thank you. So I was very, very proud.
Thank you, Brother Mory. That's perfect.
Ready?
And now we're ready for Dr. Vera to go ahead.
I want to
All
thank
right.
the Village Demands for this invitation. The pouring of libation is one of the most important ritual ceremonies practiced by African people. It is a sacred practice that serves both healing and spiritual purposes. Pouring the libation is a system of oral speech designed to connect the visible and invisible worlds. It makes a spiritual connection between the supreme being, the unborn, the living, the dead, the orishas, the ancestors, and other natural forces. The purpose of libation is to access the power of ancestral and divine forces, to eliminate conflict amongst the affairs of the living, and to pave the way for the free flow of positive energy, and to reinforce our individual connection to each other and to the spiritual and physical worlds. The ceremony has 5 parts. First, to acknowledge the Most High, to recognize the divine laws in the universe, and mention the gathering. The purpose of the gathering, like today, is to honor the women. And other moments might be to a baby blessing a newborn, a birthday, a wedding, and so on. And most important is the invitation to the ancestors. So we retrace the pathway of life, and that's represented by the 4 moments of the sun. My granddaughter here is going to demonstrate that. First moment, we come from the invisible realm. Second moment, we are born. Third moment, we grow, mature. And then the 4th moment, we transition back to the invisible. Think about that.
Everything right, Mama.
So what's needed is a clear bowl or vessel, fresh, cool water. Sometimes people use liquor, gin probably, but for my purposes, I use water because water has no enemies. And then the woman to bless the water, signifying the primacy and power of the feminine energy, and a live plant. In the pouring,
it's performed as a call and response. Hold the vessel with both hands, signifying the sincerity and reverence. And I'm going to ask you to ask the family if after calling the woman's name, if you would say Ashe. And Ashe means so be it. And this was signifying, so for example, I'm going to call out the name Makeda. And your response?
Ashe.
Ashe. Okay. I didn't do it. So I'm going to first, the cool, fresh water. Cool, fresh water that freshens the road, that freshens our home, that freshens our power, that freshens the one at the crossroads. Freshness that has no end. Freshness that we do not see an early death. Ashe,
Ashe.
Ashe, Asheo.
Asheo.
So again, Mory, my granddaughter, she's gonna assist me with this. So you're gonna respond after each name is called. Mary McLeod Methune.
Ashe.
I call upon Barbara Jordan.
Ashe.
I call upon Zora Neale Hurston.
Ashe.
I call upon Ida B. Wells.
Ashe.
I call upon Amy Jacks Garvey.
Ashe.
I call upon Billie Holiday.
Ashe.
I call upon Anna Murray.
Ashe.
I call upon my mother, Vera
Ashe.
LaPlaz Wilson. Ashe. Now I invite you, family, to call up on your historical and personal ancestors.
I call upon Queen Aunt Victoria.
Ashe.
Calling Anita Black.
Ashe.
I call on Marie Duckett. Ashe.
Auntie Lula Briggs Galloway.
Ashe.
I call on Bernice W. Hutchins.
Ashe. Ashe.
Queen Nanny.
Okay. Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and I hope you'll practice this with your families, especially the children.
It's important that we honor our ancestors at every occasion.
Yes.
And as Black folks, we tend to have a lot of celebrations and we don't want to forget our traditions. We need to pass them on. We'd like to have a few minutes of drumming by Brother Mory. Uh-oh, he's on mute. He's on mute. Does he know?
Brandon, can you unmute him?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute him right now, but he's still on mute. I'm asking him to unmute right now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mama.
It's now my great honor to introduce to you Kaya Nunuvo. Kaya Nunuvo is a movement architect who uses the skill of physical expression with digital or graphic art to highlight social ills, economic pandemics, and cultural injustices inheritance within Africa. She's been within the creative business for 13 years and is still pushing the boundaries of cultural and creative conversation. Collaboration is the driving force for her work. However, the production you will see is purely a segment of her full-hour show on the topic of hair. And hair plays a role within our identity as Black women and in our way we view ourselves and the way that we are viewed by society. You may now follow the works of and journey of her work on her social page. And her hashtag is we're going to put it in the chat. And we look forward to our presentation by Ms. Kaya.
Texture, flow to locks, your crown and all its authenticity is who you are. Mntwana Sekhaya, each strand of your hair is your roadmap to your ancestral history. As believed, our strength are drawn from our crown. The fertility of your seed is discovered through the lusciousness of your hair. Don't hide such from the world. Wear it upright. Wear it with honor. This is who you are. Igama lami uKhaya Ndlovu, and I am K Movement. INWELE is where your knowledge and life skills are passed down to you. Seated there with your neck and back paying the price of the ambitious styles one tries to achieve. Have you ever wondered about the geometry that goes into the crafting of the various braiding techniques we as a culture have mastered and made our very own? Time plays a huge role in the execution of this masterpiece that depicts our value to society and personal identity. This masterpiece is woven from the strength of Samson into our rich and rooted footprint, standing in harmony, beaming the ray of light and hope. Beauty is you. You are your crown.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. You know, this artist is from South Africa, and she has been to practice with us several times, and this time she wasn't able to join us, though she has been very committed to sharing her work, especially this work that she has created. As you know, Black women have long struggled with their hair and how to wear it and what to do with it, and how they are often struggling with how to be in a professional environment and still be their authentic selves. And so it's no wonder that Madam C.J. Walker was one of the first Black women millionaires because of that. And it's been a long struggle, and I think in many ways we've come far in how how we view ourselves, how we wear our hair, that is reflective of our heritage that we would not have in the past been able to do. I just want to be sure that everyone knows that this performance represents the beauty of sisterhood worldwide. We all Black women share a common tradition and culture. And so again, thank you so much for that piece. It was beautiful and so much, so inspiring. And again, too, thank you, Mama Vera, for your lovely presentation of Libations that call to our ancestors. So I would like to take this moment to, as president of the Western Region Council on Black American Affairs, take a moment of liberty here and talk about that organization. As Dr. Stanback Stroud has shared, that the Western Region is part of the National Council on Black American Affairs, the first affiliate of AACC. And so as the president, it's been my honor to include the Village Demand Statewide Coalition as our newest member chapter of the organization. We have currently 7 chapters, 4 in California, the BEA, Black Education Association, which is Chabot Las Positas Community College District. PA, which is the first chapter, is Peralta Association. We have a chapter in Southern California. And besides those chapters in California, we have a chapter in Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. So, you know, it's our mission is to include all Black folks who are either students, staff, administrators, faculty, to include them in all of the opportunities that we provide for professional development, for opportunities to advance your career, for opportunities for African-American students to be successful. We offer scholarships. And as I mentioned earlier, Dr. Stanback Stroud has an award that we named after her for her leadership in diversity and inclusion. So with that, if you are at all interested in becoming a member of the Village Demands, we welcome you. If you would like to become a member of any of our other affiliate chapters, we welcome you. Or if you would like to start your own chapter, that would be great as well, right? And we would support you in doing that. So if you visit our website, you can get all our contact information, and we welcome you. It is important that you have a support system where you are. If you are in a college where you're one of a very few, that strength is in numbers. So if you want to belong to an organization that is larger than just your own college, this is an opportunity, because we at the Village Demands is a statewide coalition. So with that, it is my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Siri Brown. Dr. Siri Brown is the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs and Student Success for the Peralta Community College District, and was raised in the Fuba area, and came from a family that is strong-willed, determined, and that promoted pride in their African heritage. Her family history is rich. For instance, Dr. Brown's great-grandmother founded the first Black elderly home in San Jose, and her family helped introduce Juneteenth to the San Jose area, a holiday which is still being celebrated to this day. Dr. Brown is the great-granddaughter of Lula Gaspy Chapman of Carthay, Texas, a skilled midwife who defied racial and gender lines by traveling through the region, assisting in the births and healing of both Black and white patrons. Dr. Brown comes from a long, strong family line who believe in fighting for justice and building projects and institutions that expressed a deep love for Black people. Dr. Brown has been a faculty member in ethnic studies and African-American studies at Merritt College, home of the Black Panthers, and at UC Berkeley. She holds an MA in African-American studies and a PhD in US history, with an emphasis in early American, African-American, and US women's history from Ohio State University. Her research centers on racialized legal and social resistance to violence against women. It is now my honor to present to you Dr. Siri Brown.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Village, and thank you for coming today. I really want to express my thanks to the Western Region Council on Black American Affairs, to Dr. Stacy Thompson for her leadership, her sisterhood, to RSS Consulting for all the amazing work, to the Deltas for the support and the sisterhood, and especially to you all. There are nearly 200 people here on our webinar, and I know you have emails that you're itching to get to and meetings that you had to reschedule. But it's important for us to come together today, put all that aside, and remember, re-remember, and call out who we are as Black women. And so I'm honored to be asked to speak about this topic: Black women and the Black family, power, wisdom, and strength throughout time. Next slide. Well, you know, it was mentioned already that so many people were very excited about Vice President Kamala Harris's rise to this position just so recently. And, you know, when it happened, so many people were, especially Black women and Black girls, just felt so inspired and listened to her words. And it's always a wonderful thing when a woman takes the place that is her purpose for the time and that she brings inspiration. But I said to myself, people keep saying this is the first and this is the highest. And what a shame, because it means that then we don't really know our history. That what Kamala Harris has achieved and what she may achieve even beyond this is merely just a reflection of who we have always been in terms of leadership. Next slide. From a Pan-African perspective, if we understand what's happening and what has happened globally, past and present, then we know that there has already been a Black woman president of the country of Liberia, leading after the Civil War, being honored all over the globe for her humane levels of leadership. President Sirleaf served as a modern African president over an entire nation from 2006 to 2018. Next slide. So we have to then go back and look at how we think we know what we know and how to expand what we think we know and remember really who we are. One of the myths that sociologists and historians have perpetuated is that there's something about Black women. They're just so strong. They're so bossy and so pushy and so demanding. What is it about them? And so with the Eurocentric patriarchal lens, they went back to study us within our families, and they said that yes, Black women are masculinized. They're too strong. They've been this way because of what happened to them in slavery. Well, of course, the idea of what is masculine and what is strong is certainly very pejorative and up to conversation. But their assumptions about what masculinity looks like and the strength and power that they see and saw but misunderstood in Black women must be understood within a historical context. Next slide. So that brings us to Sankofa. And I know this audience is very familiar with the concept of Sankofa and the importance to the work and to our mind frames as we do the work we do in our community colleges, that one must return to the past in order to move forward. And when we're talking about Black women, when we're talking about and honoring our sheroes and our big mamas and our great aunties, we must go back and always pull off that history, that strength, those accomplishments in order to move forward. Next slide. So let's go back, because although you are excited and certainly and rightfully so about Vice President Harris, what about Queen T? 1400 years before Christ, Queen T was figured very prominently in ancient Kemet, what's improperly called Egypt. And she was given great honor as a leader in ancient Kemet. We see this in the statuary and all the images left of her, where images like of the Sphinx that were normally used to honor male leadership were used to represent her. And so we find that when people say, oh, Black women, we come from a line of queens, that actually this is actual real history. Next slide. And there are so many that we only have a limited time to go into it. But there's also Queen Hatshepsut, who took the throne after the death of her husband and used male regalia to symbolize the power of the womanhood that she had in leading Kemet forward. And in this leadership reign, she's known for building all kinds of temples and monuments as opposed to waging war for more land. And she left this legacy to us thousands and thousands of years. Again, 1400 to 58 before Christ. And so our history goes back thousands and thousands of years in terms of Black women leadership. Next slide. And when we look at the symbols of ancient Kemet and the ancient African world, we see that women are held up prominently in the spiritual and philosophical understandings as well. And so the images of Ma'at throughout the temples, a woman, a Black woman, symbolizing truth, justice, and righteousness. And this is something you could spend a lot more time on, because in African traditional societies, thousands of years back, to the present, women figure into the roles of the origins of humanity, the stories of how we came to be. As a matter of fact, in many traditional African languages, you can't even assign a gender to God. You can't say within the language, oh God, he is so great, because the language representing the culture and the philosophical understandings of the Most High won't allow you to say that. So our traditions are that women are of power, women are divine, women represent, and women are a part of the creation stories of our traditions. When it comes to the enslavement, the Ma'afa, Black women also continue to lead the fight against enslavement. And the fight against enslavement is an important story to tell to yourself, to your family, and to your children. Queen Hatshepsut from Queen Nzinga led in the 1600s the war against the Portuguese who were striving to enslave our people. And so when she rose up, she used her military genius that she was raised to understand how to politically strategize and how to militarily strategize. And she led the wars against the Portuguese. And the Portuguese generals even acknowledged the level of her skill by saying she is the greatest military strategist ever confronted, that ever confronted the armed forces of Portugal. Her tactics keep our commanders sweating in confusion and dismay. Her aim is nothing less than total destruction of the slave trade. Next slide. And there is also Queen Nanya Santawe, another warrior woman leading men, 5,000 soldiers in the battle over the Golden Stool against British colonialism. And she too, as a woman, was a leader, both militarily and also against the slave trade. Next slide. And so let's read an honoring of Nanya Asantewaa, where she said to the men, to the village, "Now I see that some of you fear to go forward to fight for our king. If it were the brave days of the Ositutu or the Okomo Anyoke or Opuku Ware chiefs would not sit down and see their king to be taken away without firing a shot. No European could have dared speak of chiefs of the Ashanti in the way the British governor spoke to you this morning. Is it true that the bravery of the Ashanti is no more? I cannot believe it. It cannot be. I must say this, if you, the men of the Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon fellow women. We will fight the white man. We will fight to the last of us falls in the battlefields." Next slide. And so when looking at the foundations of the strength of Black women and the idea that Black women are strong, it really is a part of a whole tradition and line of African philosophy and the power of women and the way that we hold our power and the way that it's reified over and over and over. Through matrilineal descent, and even also in patriarchal societies in traditional Africa, it wasn't a European form of patriarchy. Women held power. Women had spiritual power and were conceived, as I mentioned earlier, in the conceptions of the origins and the spiritual traditions. Respect for age meant elderly women held powerful positions. Female secret societies with their spiritual rituals and advocacy. We owned businesses and land. We were able to leave marriages if we wanted to. We were able to have our rights with our children. We were the bearers of culture. And as you saw, we led men into battle. Well, it's interesting then, because if you look at the origins of feminism here in this country, white women's rights and feminism, the beginnings are usually centered around the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention, where a group of men and women wrote the Declaration on the Rights of Women. And we won't read all of it, but the next slide shows you in red some of the things that these white women were calling for. They were saying, and I highlighted them in red, that she, white women, had no voice, that she was civilly dead, that all property is taken from her, that she's to be obedient to her husband, that she's deprived of life and liberty and she's abused, and that she cannot divorce, she can't leave or separate from someone who's abusive, and if she does, she has no rights over her children. Next slide. They go on to talk about how that men, speaking of white men, had monopolized nearly all of the profitable employment, and that she had no avenues for wealth and distinction, and that she was denied education, and that she played no role in the spiritual churches, and that there was a different code of morals around what men could do and what women could do, and that he himself has claimed as if he himself is God. Next slide. Well, it's interesting when you look at that history of what white women were calling for, and you juxtapose it to what I just covered very briefly in Africa's history, because that was not our tradition. We owned our land. We had our power. We were validated in our power. We led men into battle and women into battle. And so when people say that with history, things get better, over time, things get better, I push back against that. Because for Black women, for African women, when we look at who we are and we look at what happened as we entered into the most traumatic phase of our history, the shortest, but most traumatic phase of our history, the Ma'afa, we have to compare really who it is that we come from. The strength and resilience and power that our big mamas hold, that our grandmothers hold, that our mothers hold, that we ourselves hold, is something that the Ma'afa could not destroy. Slavery could not destroy it. And the fact that sociologists and historians and psychologists who are outside of our understanding don't get that and want to label it as something negative, or the fact that we work in these community colleges and colleagues who are not African American, who just don't understand, like, why is she so pushy? Why is she so bossy? And label us as these Black women who are too strong and put us into corners in our positions. You don't understand that this is a part of who we are. It's a part of the core and essence of our soul and our spirit and our mindset and our ethic. And nothing can stop or destroy it. During the Ma'afa, next slide, Black women were treated with great brutality and great viciousness, along with our brothers in the slave trade. At every phase, sexual assault and rape and violence occurred on the slave ships. Sexual assault and violence occurred on the plantations, as we know. Black women were whipped and beaten, as we know. Black women who were pregnant, the belly was put down into a hole and she's laid on the floor and whipped just for nothing, so that the master could send a message to the child inside the womb that you are mine and you are subject to me. And so the brutality was severe. And of course we know this. Next slide. And we know that it came in so many different forms. Next slide. Uh-oh, we lost. So we were abused and branded and whipped and mistreated and stripped down naked and humiliated. Next slide. And tortured and maimed and brutalized. Next slide. And beaten as if we were animals. Next slide. And probably most painful to us and to our history and our story is the way that we were sold, or our children were sold away from us and from their fathers and uncles and brothers and sisters. And this served as a major critical piece that Black women in slavery would talk about and write about and speak about. Next slide. And there are two books I really recommend to people that talk about sexual violence and the kinds of choices that Black women had to make in slavery. Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet Ann Jacobs. She talks very, very profoundly in her narrative about how the master was coming on to her and the horrible things he was saying into her ear about what he was going to do to her, and how she was a child when this started, and just how she has to navigate this reality as a child on a plantation, and then how she has children and she wants to get away from the brutality. But for Black women, running away there was another piece to that decision for us, and that was our children. And so when she runs away, she actually runs away to her grandmother's house, which is very nearby, and she hides in the attic for years and years and years in a small crawl space the size of a coffin, so that she can look through the panel and keep her eye on her children. And so her story tells us about what we experienced and how we navigated and negotiated the reality. And Celia a Slave, another story about resistance where her master repeatedly began raping her again as she was a child, would come to her house on the plantation and rape her and rape her and rape her whenever he wanted to. And she fought and she fought and she fought. And finally, one night she picked up a billet of wood and she knocked him over the head and she killed him, which is a crime. So she's charged with murder and she's put in jail, and they find out that she's pregnant from the master's rape. And they execute her after the birth of the baby because the baby belongs to the plantation, the baby is wealth. Read these stories about Black women because there's very few of us who are able to tell our stories. Read the poetry of Phyllis Wheatley, read the few narratives that exist so that we can understand what our ancestors went through. Next slide. So I ask you to consider, what are the strengths? How did our foremothers survive such treatment, survive such brutality, such consistent violence against family and home and body and self? How do we survive that? This is a 400+ year ma'afa, or Holocaust, this system of enslavement where 100+ million people experienced it. How does a people survive that? How do Black women survive that? Next slide. And so I offer you these few ways that we survived then and that we can survive and thrive now. One is through sisterhood. There is probably nothing more powerful than sisterhood of Black women. The way that we can support each other, comfort each other, advocate for each other, fight for each other, console each other, hear each other out and listen to each other. Sisterhood is so incredible. And I was so honored to have Dr. Mama Vera come with us on our Fulbright to Brazil, to Salvador, Brazil, where we got to experience sisterhood. And we met with the Sisterhood of the Good Death, the Bao Marte. And what an incredible group of Black women. This group of Black women was formed in the early 1800s. They were enslaved Black women and free Black women when slavery was alive and well in Brazil. And they formed this secret society of highly spiritual Black women. As a matter of fact, we were told when we were there that Black women would go to plantations to capture and rescue Black women who were of high spiritual order on their plantation and bring them into this tradition. This tradition is very strong and still very alive, and there's a major festival that happens every year. But to enter this sisterhood, this is not something you can just click and join and pay a small fee. You have to have strong character and decades of spiritual, cultural, and political work in the community before you might be asked to join this powerful sisterhood. And being around these sisters and in a country that holds up Black women the way that they do in the African traditional culture of Salvador Bahia was very empowering and enlightening for us. How else did we survive slavery? Let's go to the next slide. By our spiritual foresight, our wisdoms and our traditions. If you're African American, this is nothing really new that I'm telling you, because you know why Big Mama, you know, your grandmother, your mother is the sun, and we are the mere little planets that orbit around her. I don't care how many degrees you get, what college, what kind of car, it doesn't matter. Mama, Big Mama is the center of everything because of her character, her wisdom, her grit, her wit, and her ability to just tell you the truth. You're young and you're just gonna go on and do something she said not to do, then you come back around to Big Mama and say, I should have listened to you. And so that's such a part of our tradition and our culture. And again, that's not new for us. This is tens of thousands of years old. Next slide. How else did we survive the Ma'afa? By keeping family as central. It's so painful to see so many horrible, false, negative images of who Black people are across the globe, and certainly here in the US. It's so painful to see images that there are no Black men in our families and no fathers and uncles and grandfathers. It's so painful to see the denigration of single Black women and the blame that they're given for the way that youth turn out. It's painful to see such distortions and such lies, because family is central to us. We have our issues in our family, but so do you, and so does everybody else. That's the human experience. But the core strength of how we survive this system, past and present, is with family, blood and not blood. Your cousin, your uncle, your brother may not be blood, but that's family. And what we do for family and for family, and what we did when slavery ended, if you haven't looked at it, shows you that family was number one to us. When slavery ended, we walked hundreds of miles to try to find our children. We went to the Freedmen's Bureau to try to locate our family and our loved ones. We got married. We joined our families together. We shifted gender roles away from what the master made us do on the plantation. Family was central and still remains central to who we are. How else did we survive? Resistance, resistance, resistance. You will never, ever stop Black women from fighting, whether it's at your community college or whether it's in the community or in the nation or in other nations. We have that innate sense of ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. And you see it every time they murder one of our young children, our young Black boys or young Black girls. You see it every time. Some of us don't know our history, don't know all the fancy language, but when injustice happens, it rises up in us and we go forward and we fight. And every time we organize and we fight, everybody else is impacted. Everybody else gets the benefit of the movements that Black folks create. And that's just history. That's just truth. That innate sense of justice and righteousness, it's right there in your Black female leadership. It's right there in your Black female students. It's right here all around us. And all we simply have to do is follow it, stand next to it, and support the leadership and the resistance of Black women. I put a few of my favorites here because there's so many, we would have to be here for weeks. But Nana, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, is someone to know and to study. In Jamaica, the Maroon women and men fought against the British so strongly that the British had to concede land. There are nations inside Jamaica that are owned and controlled 100% by the Maroon councils. And Nanny was the one who refused to sell out. Some of the male leadership sold out to the British slave holders and signed a treaty that's really kind of tricky. And she said, I will never sign a treaty with these white people like this. I will hold my nation sacred. And so she's highly honored. She's the only woman national hero of that country. Next slide. Sojourner Truth, of course, who we know and we hold up so well. Again, and she asked this question, and when she asked this question, she did what we're doing so much today, which is, wait a minute, what does it mean to be male, female, masculine? How do you think that being strong means man and weak means woman? And so she gave this famous speech, the Ain't I a Woman speech, when she said, ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. And she bore the strength of her arm and the power that it showed. And she said, I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could heed me. And ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it and bear the lashes well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen them all sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? I love this speech, and I know people have heard it, but really she's really flipping the whole idea of what we think of as male characteristics and female characteristics, and saying the Black woman holds these characteristics. And that is what womanhood looks like. It is strong and persevering and resilient. And we understand that no one understands us sometime except for when we call out to the Most High God. Next slide. And of course, Harriet Tubman, who we all know, and hopefully we've seen the films and hopefully we've read books about Harriet Tubman. You know, it's a wonder that there's one Black woman in history that they teach us in grade school. And if there's one, well, you must know that this was a mighty sister. And I don't have to tell you about her, but I do want to read an honoring that the great Frederick Douglass wrote about her, because I think it's a beautiful honoring to the testament of the way that Black women do our work. Next slide. Douglass said in honor of Harriet Tubman, he said, the difference between us, between him and her and Harriet Tubman, is very marked. Most that I have done and suffered in the service of our cause has been in public, and I have received much encouragement at every step of the way. You, on the other hand, have labored in a private way. I have wrought in the day, you in the night. The midnight sky and the silent stars have been the witness of your devotion to the freedom and your heroism. Accepting John Brown of sacred memory, I know of no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to to serve our enslaved people than you have. Next slide. And this picture here of Tubman with a family that she helped to free just symbolizes what Douglas just said, that she served with humility. No need for applause. That's not why she served. She served for her spiritual, political understanding. She's pictured there in the far left. She's not looking all proud and boastful. She's got her head down. Now, of course, she was America's most wanted, right? Because she was considered a criminal for stealing property off of the plantations. So she's definitely looking low key. But that's how we lead. We just do the work. You might give us awards and stuff, but we just do the work. We just keep fighting. Truth, justice, and righteousness. Next slide. Who is this powerful sister? In the times of Black Lives Matter, you should definitely know the great Ida B. Wells, one of my very favorite, a brilliant, brilliant thinker, strategist, fearless. They wanted to lynch her so badly because what she did was she went down into the South. Well, she was in the South. And when the white press would say, oh, yes, we had to lynch this Black man or this Black teenage boy because he raped a white woman, and she would do the investigation. She's actually the first investigative journalist, and she would do all the research and interview and just print. That's not what happened. There was no rape even claimed. As a matter of fact, this Black man was asking for his proper pay as a sharecropper or asking to vote. And so she published the Red Record. And as we think about the kinds of lynchings that we're still experiencing, Black men and Black women, Black boys and girls, we have to give testament and study the strategies of Ida B. Wells. It's not just to hold them up, it's to see how they organize. She single-handedly decreased the number of lynchings in the South, single-handedly. The NAACP adopted her strategies, and then many of the men moved her out of position because she was just, quite frankly, too strong, too brilliant. But that didn't stop her. She kept on moving and moving and moving until they laid her in the ground, and then she just kept moving as an ancestor. Next slide. And what about this brilliant sister? I was happy the other day I heard Dr. Stanback Stroud quote the great Dr. Anya Dula Cooper, who received her PhD from Harvard in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And she wrote this brilliant book called A Voice from the South. Required reading. People say that W.E. Du Bois actually took some of this work. And we love W.E.B. Du Bois, but boy, Black women, we contribute, and people don't always give us credit for it. So let's read a little excerpt of what she said about women, Black women. She said, only the Black woman can say when and where I enter in the quiet, undisputed dignity of my womanhood, without violence and without suing or special patronage. Then and there, the whole Negro race enters with me. Is it not evident then that as individual workers for this race, we must address ourselves with no half-hearted zeal to this feature of our mission? The need is felt and must be recognized by all. A womanist understanding that nothing will happen for African Americans, for the Black race, unless women lead the way and are included in that. Next slide. And this committed sister also held up in our libations. And as educators, we should know and we should study how the great Mary McLeod Bethune, dedication. She built a college that was on a former garbage dump, with $2 in her hand. Her dedication and our dedication to educating our children with our own hands and our own minds in these rise of these Black colleges and these independent Black schools. And she rose to such prominence that she would hold federal office over the National Youth League and other areas in Roosevelt's government. Next slide. And she said a couple of quotes that I love as well. Next to God, we are indebted to women. First for life itself, and then for making it worthwhile, making it worth living. She also said the true worth of a race must be measured by the character of its womanhood. The status then, and that's an African proverb, the status of the nation can be measured by the status of the women and the children. Next slide. And there's so many, I can't go on because Dr. Thompson's gonna pull my rug. Please, Rosa Parks, she was not a tired old woman. This is a strategist. Do you know that she was fighting against sexual assault of Black women? long before the Me Too movement and all of that. She was fighting against rape. She was fighting for basic civil rights. Her arrest was a political strategy. When they teach us in K through 12 that this tired Black woman, oh, that's such a disservice to her commitment. And the great Ella Baker, the master organizer that really led the civil rights movement to its radicalism and to the rights that we received. Study her strategies and the way that she lifted up the people to lead the movement to success. Next slide. And of course, we always remember not only those who have passed and transitioned and are in amongst us as ancestors, but those who are with us. Assata Shakur should be freed, shouldn't she? Assata Shakur should be exonerated, shouldn't she? Assata Shakur is a bad revolutionary sister, past and present, and we can't even have access to her because this government still claims that she's a criminal. This government still has a bounty on her head and she's hidden by people who know and love and respect her. This woman's so bad, she escaped federal custody. I don't know how you do that. Well, I don't know how you do that. But Assata Shakur is another sister that we need to remember that we have movement work to free her. And the great Erica Huggins, who we're so blessed to have in the Bay Area, who led the Oakland School for Children, the School of the Black Panther Party, and just, the concepts of free breakfast and the concepts of an African-centered education and all of that work that the women did in the party. She's still here. We need to thank her. Next slide. And it brings me to a mutual friend of Dr. Thompson and I, because very recently there was the unveiling of a house in West Oakland, right across the street where our beloved Huey P. Newton was murdered. And she said during the pandemic, we gotta honor Black women in the Black Panther Party. And so through a lot of trials and work and contributions from the community, look at this amazing mural. The first ever to honor the contributions of Black women in the Black Panther Party, who were, by the way, the majority of the members and the soldiers of the party. The free breakfast and the free rides to see your families in prison and the free shoe service and the free groceries delivered and on and on and on. Well, of course, that's us. That's our ethic. Without pay, no check, no nonprofit. This mural is something to be seen. And we thank Jill Christina Vest for her vision around that and the artists who brought it alive. Black girls now can walk down in this neighborhood and look up and see the beauty of who we are, the power of who we are. And the city just conceded and named that street Huey P. Newton Way. I love projects like this because it's the way that we can say we will not be forgotten. We will stand our ground. We will say her name. We will paint it on the side of our house. Whatever it is that we do, we know that it's up to us to tell our story and to hold ourselves up. It's not up to someone else. And so we thank the creators and the artists for this mural. Next slide. And really last, but of course not least, are all of the Black women who are from our family line, our aunties, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, our big mamas, our nieces, back and back and back, hundreds and hundreds of years. I mean, just think for a moment where you would be if they didn't have the perseverance and the strength, if they didn't pass on that wisdom, if they didn't survive the lash and the separation, if they didn't march in the streets for rights, if they didn't fight and toil to raise you in the best safety and care and food that they could, despite of what they may or may not have had materially, the wealth of what Black women have passed on, you can't put a price on that. You can't put a price on it. And so I ask you to think for a moment, who is it that you need to thank? What Black women do you need to say thank you to in your prayers and in your libations? Thank you for giving me everything you have given me. I see you in my hand. When I look at my hand, I see my great grandmother's hand. Thank them every day and thank those who are here with us still. In our community college system, there are Black women soldiers that are classified professionals that are brilliant and fighting for our students, that are faculty that are changing the minds of our students, that our students who are struggling against every form of barrier to come to us, to have you maximize the power potential that they already have inside of them. The Black female students in front of you, you don't have to worry because they can get it done if you just quite simply get out of their way and support them. They made it there. Some of them single mothers, some of them have been through so many traumas and tragedies, and they come to us. Put your stereotypes, your misconceptions, your fears, your prejudice, put it aside and let these Black women and girls rise, because that's who they are. And if you get in their way, they might tell you something anyway. Next slide. Next slide. And I want to say thank you and read just this last thing. I'm probably over time. Happy Women's, Black Women's, and All Women's History Month. Thank you to all the women who paved the way for us so beautifully to have life live more beautifully. And thank you to you all for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, taking us to church and to giving us the factual lecture so we can continue to tell this story. So I've had several people ask if we're going to make your slides available. That's certainly up to you. But I told her, you should tell them they should take your class. You know,
can share it however he wants to.
Right. And I just want to say, you know, my very close dear friend, Dr. Brown, you have to go to a museum with a historian. It is a different experience. It is a wonderful experience. So Brandon, do we have any questions? Did you have questions in the chat? You want to?
Yeah, let me go ahead and
pass it to you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thompson. Dr. Brown, we have this first question for you. How can Black women correct our unethical erasure from the histories of first and second wave feminism and our marginalization in civil rights discourses? And how can we fully actualize the power we demonstrated in last year's election and our critical role in preserving democracy?
Oh my gosh, someone must be in graduate school. Really profound questions and great questions. And so repeat the first one for me. I'm sorry, that was.
No worries. The first portion of it says, how can Black women correct our unethical erasure from the histories of first and second wave feminism and our marginalized civil rights discourses?
Okay, great question. I do understand what you're saying. I'll be straightforward and just tell you that we have to stop asking other people to do what we need to do ourselves, you know, because they just won't get it right. And they generally just don't know how to center and understand our contributions. And so there are so many historians, writers, organizers who understand exactly what our contribution is. And if we are not one of those, we can become one of those ourselves, and we can tell our own story. Today, it's easier to tell our own story than any other time because you've got blogs, you've got YouTube channels, you better get busy. We have to center ourselves. If we sit and wait for other people to tell the story of the civil rights movement and calls for Black power and all of these things, it's not really going to happen. We have to do it ourselves and support those that are already doing it.
Thank you.
The second
and the other question, I'm sorry, I missed it.
I'll read it out loud to you, and then we'll turn it to Dr. Thompson after you answer. How can we fully actualize the power we demonstrated in last year's election and our critical role in preserving democracy?
Oh my gosh. You know, Biden said it, and he could have said it a lot louder and just wrote a check or something, because he said, I owe you Black folks, because everyone saw how we won the election and who led that movement in Georgia for us to lead the election. You know, just standing on the strengths and traditions, here we are, of course, asking for basic rights still 450 plus years later. And so we have to join organizations and movements. We can't just sit on the side and be critics of it. We have to be a part of galvanizing our political power be it here locally, statewide, like Western Region does, or across the nation. And that's what our role is. And if we don't do it, it's going to come back up anyway. Because I said that innate injustice, we're always going to be organizing and pushing for what's right, because that's who we are.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Brown. We're come to the end of our time, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stanback Stroud for some closing remarks.
So I would like to thank Dr. Brown, inspiring, invigorating, and quite frankly, vindicating and validating. And that's to all of those folks that said I cut up too much when I was coming through the community college system, and particularly through Peralta Community College District. It's because that's who I am, if you ask Dr. Brown. In closing, I just want to say that you have just experienced the power and the strength, the talent and the excellence, the majesty of Dr. Siri Brown. You witnessed the artistic and the cultural contributions of dance expression and drumming. And you lived firsthand the beauty of the Black family, the Black woman, the excellence, the majesty that's not commonly presented in mass media. So I want to thank you for being here, for supporting the Village Demands, for celebrating the Black woman and Black family. Dr. Bush of the Village Demands is known for his powerful closing remarks, and for that matter, opening remarks and middle remarks too, quite frankly, if you ever heard him speak. When he was invited to send, to provide the closing remarks, but he had to send his regrets because he had some competing commitments. And so I'm a fill-in for Dr. Bush. And, you know, those are some big shoes to fill. You know, first of all, Dr. Bush is a preacher. So just, I'm gonna tell you right there, his delivery, I can't even match. But I wanna try to channel him and share some of the words that are direct quotes from him, because he did, you know, as he did his own personal celebration of the Black woman several months back, when we were thanking everybody for the work we were doing in getting the Village Demand stood up. These were empowering words, and I'd like to share them with you. I keep them near and I call on them when I need them, because you know it's hard out there for a Black woman, a mother, a sister, a brother, a cousin, a Black uncle and auntie and grandmother, because being Black is serious business. And it's a full-time endeavor. That means when we wake up, we be tired. When we go to work, we be tired. When we come home from work, we be tired. And his words came precisely at the right time for me, because sometimes under our superwoman capes, we be barreling, holding on. And then the village is right there. And Brother Ed could bring us on home with some beautiful, empowering and uplifting words of gratitude that also modeled for the young brothers the full picture of what it looks like to be a Black man. He said and would be saying to you today, these are his words. He said, I was surveying my screen and making some assumptions about the names, but also being able to visually see with those who have their cameras on. I want to acknowledge the amount of African-American women who are in this room. He said, I want you to know that we see you. And during that time period when your worth and your value has been questioned, sister, and oftentimes you have been demeaned and left unprotected, and your gifts and your talented are challenged. Your talents are challenged in ways in which other folks would get a pass. We see you. We understand the complexity in which you have to navigate a system that is oppositional to who you are as a Black person, but is also oppositional to who you are as a woman. And so for you to still go through that and continue to leave and be at the forefront of these efforts is not lost on us. I want you to know that we love you and we see you as the queens and the warriors and the leaders that you are. And it is okay for us as African-American men to follow you onto the battlefield and not the other way around, because you have proven yourself countless times throughout history that you have the competency, the capacity, and the courage to produce the best of us. and to lead us and to literally free and to liberate us. You are the direct descendants of Harriet Tubman. You birthed her and you follow her simultaneously. Dr. Bettina Love said that everything we need is in the house, and what it is that what we need is you. We will win because you dreamed it, sisters. We will achieve it because you prayed it. We would get there because you carry it in your spirit. So I just ask that you double down on who it is that you are. The beauty of yourself, your mind, your body, and spirit through this work is literally going to be birthed and nurtured and grown and cultivated as a result of who you are. You are so right now. We just thank you that we literally bow before you. And we ask that you continue to carry us forward and to move our agenda and to move our people and to move our work to a better place because you have your touch. So I appreciate all the work you have done, all the work going forward. It is my honor and my privilege to walk behind you in this endeavor. I vow to protect you, who you are, every step of the way. And he said, please enjoy the rest of the day. So many thanks to Dr. Bush for those inspiring words that were written, by the way, months ago.
Right.
And can be applied every day to the Black woman and the Black family. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the planning committee, Lakeisha Bradley, Brandon, of course, amazing, Sophia Forbes. And most of all, especially, thank you, Dr. Stanback Stroud, for your leadership. Thank you, Kaya. Thank you, Mama Vera. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for taking us to church and to school at the same time. Love that. And so we look forward to you going forward, using this information and being inspired to make some changes, as Dr. Brown has said. As Black women, that's who we're destined to be. So I look forward to seeing all of you in many roles in the future. And thank you for coming.